there. Like I said, it's 20% of the time. If we have 50 plays and we have 10 mental misassignments or mental errors, that's 20% of the time. So that's way too high. In the past, we're looking more like at less than 10%. So it gives us a really good chance to be successful. 20%, that's too high. That's one play a series where you're really making it tough on yourself. So we got to fix that. And whatever that is, I think, guys who are making too many mistakes shouldn't be playing. We got to start cutting some reps. And maybe guys who aren't playing, give them a chance.
Woo! That was Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show, and all I could focus on was McAfee trying to do the math when he said 10 out of 50 was 20%. McAfee start doing like this to figure out, to check his work. Robert Mays, never have to check his work, one of the best, smartest voices on football. So, Robert, when you hear Aaron Rodgers say this, hey, some guys need to have their reps cut and stop playing, what's your takeaway after you look at the 3-4 Green Bay Packers?
It makes me think about how good it was for Green Bay and for Packer fans and everybody associated with the organization that it was going well for the last couple of years. Because if it hadn't been, I wonder how quickly this would have happened previously. I always thought that the marriage between Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers was fascinating because it was kind of a tenuous relationship at the beginning. He was asking Aaron to do a lot of things maybe Aaron wasn't super comfortable with within the structure of the offense. And when they eventually kind of came to a resolution and a harmonious place in year 2, it led to him winning 2 MVPs back to back. And now that it's started to erode a little bit, I feel like some of that tension has started to creep back into this, and I wonder where it goes from here. It all feels a little rocky and a little shaky, the ground that we're walking on right now.
Robert, I got to add this because when I look at what's happening with Aaron Rodgers right now, I'm seeing this sort of larger trend. I'm seeing that whole generation of players. Russell Wilson's having a bad year. Aaron Rodgers is having a bad year. Matty Ice has been put on ice. You got Tom Brady having problems. Of these 4 guys, which of them, because I think 2 of them probably won't be playing next season, but which of them do you think have a chance to turn it around maybe later on this season or maybe next year? Because right now, across the board, it looks like we're seeing the end of a generation of quarterbacks that have pretty much led the league both in interest and in winning for the last decade.
I feel like if you look at the way Brady is playing right now, he looks uncomfortable just physically. The way he's moving in the pocket, the way he's playing the position from a mechanical standpoint doesn't look like Tom Brady. And I don't know if that means we're on the slow decline to that never coming back. It's possible. How many times have we had this conversation? We're like, well, the cliff is probably coming for Tom Brady. It comes for everybody. And it comes faster than you think every single time. But Brady's always been able to stave it off. So is there enough physical decline now because he wasn't maniacally interested in the preparation process this offseason and throughout the way he has been in the past? That wouldn't be shocking to me at all. With Rodgers, I don't think it's physical, and that's why I think that there's a chance this can bounce back. It just looks like there isn't total buy-in to playing within the structure of the offense. Some of the stuff that when he's reading out certain concepts or making certain decisions, it's not as crisp as you want it to be. And I think removing Davante Adams from that equation is part of it. You look at what the Packers were with Davante over the last couple of years. The decision-making was incredibly simplified because of Davante. I was looking up some numbers before I came on, and I thought this was fascinating. Davante Adams last year was 11th in the number of targets he got out of the slot. Okay, that makes sense. He's a good player. He was 53rd in the amount of snaps that he had from the slot. Think about the gap there.
Wow.
When he was in the slot, they threw him the ball. And against man coverage last season, more than a third of his routes against man coverage, he was targeted last year. So that's when we're talking about simplifying, that simplifies it. If you put him in the slot, the ball's going his way. If you play man against us, the ball's going his way. Right. Those simplifying buttons aren't there anymore. So the game is more complex in the way that Rodgers has to read it out. And I think that he's just a little frustrated and disinterested in leaning into that complexity right now. And I think that's why we've arrived in this point with the Packers offense.
And how about Russell Wilson? I know, Jason, you have been all over Russell. You're a Russell Wilson guy. On the field, you're
and all over Hackett. All over Hackett.
Off the field. Do you think, has Russell Wilson lost it, Robert? Is it the scheme? Like, what do you see there?
I think that there is a little bit of Russell Wilson just losing whatever his fastball used to be. And Russ was so reliant on his ability to make out of structure plays early in his career. That was so much of the magic of what Russell Wilson was. That athleticism at 34 years old, Russ and I are about the same age, it declines. I mean, you lose it faster than you think you would. And I think that's where we are with Russ. There's none of that second reaction, improvisational aspect to his game. And the other magic and the other kind of superpower that he had is you watch those moonball deep balls that he had in Seattle with those receivers and their ability to push the ball down the field. That has now declined and started to deteriorate. So if you're going to take away those two aspects to Russell Wilson's game, he's never been somebody that was reading things out well and making decisions based on the structure of the defense and what was there with the play. The offense that Russell Wilson plays in has traveled with Russell Wilson. No matter who the offensive coordinator was in Seattle and then now in Denver, it's hard to put him within the structure and rigidity of a normal NFL offense. And if you're going to not have the superpowers anymore, that's a recipe for disaster.
See, I would argue, Batman has powers without being superpowered. It's just the equipment and Alfred working with him. You look at the first 6 games of Russell Wilson last year with Shane Waldron, they were playing fantastic. They only lost those games because they had bad defense. What I seem to be seeing right now with Hackett is an absolute inability to structure anything. I mean, when Russell Wilson was out of the game, it was only a 4-point difference. The guy he's working with right now doesn't know how to coach. And when I see how close many of these games have been at the end, no, obviously Russell Wilson can't run at 34 the way he could at 22 or 23 years old. But it's not that he has the inability to play. You have someone who is so over their skis in coaching that he can't structure something when you have two fantastic running backs and halfway decent receivers. I don't expect the moonball to be there. He's not throwing to Tyler Lockett. Jerry Jeudy is dropping. Look, Jerry Jeudy drops balls like Drake drops albums, right? Like every other time, he's just not catching it. But at the end of the day, rather than figuring out how to coach what talent you have, it looks to me like a situation where the coach doesn't know what he's doing.
I feel like situationally it's been a disaster there, right? It goes back to week 1. Their inability to make fourth down decisions, clock management, all of that. The structure of the offense, I don't think there are that many issues with that compared to the game management stuff. The perfect example to me is early in that game against the Chargers on Monday Night Football. He has a tight end sitting over the ball, wide open, and it's like he's not even there. And that happens often with Russell Wilson. If you look at heat charts, just the way the areas that Russell Wilson accesses the field, that part of the field is off limits to Russell Wilson. And so that's the difficult part. If you're going to remove parts of the field, if you're going to remove the improvisational stuff, if he's going to struggle to push the ball down the field, what are you left with? And I think that is the problem that the Broncos are staring down right now.
And the Broncos
I will
are
say this before we go
problem.
to Matt Ryan.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead, Doc.
Yeah. I will say this before we go to Matt Ryan. If you notice, Geno ain't really throwing to the middle of the field either, right? I mean, that may just have to be an overall sort of structural thing. You got to have the kind of talent. You have to have the kind of tight ends. You have to kind of have the guys that are running across the middle. But I'll also ask you this. Matt Ryan has now been benched, right? This is probably the end of the road. And the Colts are 3-1. They're not out of it. They're certainly not out of it in their division. What do you think is the logic behind benching him after just giving him a new contract when the Titans are still in the playoff hunt?
I think they're looking at the rest of their offense and understanding that they need someone who can operate in imperfect conditions. For whatever Sam Ehlinger's defaults are and his limitations are as a passer, he can move around. And the offensive line that they're trotting out in Indianapolis right now, you can't have a statue back there. It's just a recipe for disaster. And that's exactly what they've placed Matt Ryan into. And when Frank Reich earlier this week came out and said, we didn't hold up our end of the bargain, that's exactly right. What they promised Matt Ryan when he was coming to Indianapolis is the league's best running game from last year, which it was, and an offensive line that is supposed to be the strength of this team. It's the most expensive offensive line in the NFL. So the fact that they can't protect an already immobile quarterback who's getting into his upper 30s is not surprising. So it just feels like Sam Ehlinger is an opportunity for them to at least survive with terrible pass protection, even if he's not the quarterback Matt Ryan is from a processing perspective, just being able to operate the position the same way.
You know, I wonder, and you bring up Matt Ryan, Doc, and I wonder about this, Robert. You know, we look at it, we're football fans, and we're looking at all the nuances of the game itself, without considering the business aspect of it enough and the locker room aspect. I wonder what guys in the locker room are saying about Matt Ryan, who hasn't been great, but has been good. Matt Ryan being benched for somebody who he's a better player than that guy. And they all know it. And part of the reason he's being benched, I mean, some of it's performance, but most of it is money. Because if he keeps playing, they're going to have to guarantee portions of his contract they don't want to guarantee. So I just wonder how that goes down in a locker room. And sometimes we say, well, why wasn't that team ready to play, or that team didn't reach its potential? It's like any other workplace. When you feel like the bosses are doing some shady stuff, maybe you don't perform like you should perform either.
It just feels like they've been chasing solutions for so long now. You know, when they traded for Carson Wentz last year, and then that just completely disintegrates by the end of the year, and the relationships disintegrate, and they'll do anything to get him out of the building. And then they bring Matt Ryan in, and if you look at what was happening at the offensive line over the first 5 games this year, they're cycling between different lineups and different solutions. And is this going to work? Is this going to work? And they're just scrambling right now. They're scrambling for any possible answer. And this just feels like the next step in that. And it's amazing how fast this has fallen apart, because I think 2 years ago when Phillip Rivers was there, that what you're trying to sell to Matt Ryan, that argument of you're walking into a really good situation, a really good supporting cast, that was true. 2 years ago, they did have one of the best offensive lines in the league. They did have an up-and-coming group of receivers. They did have a really well-constructed offense. And now you look at it, all of that is gone. And it's only been 2 seasons. And it just lends me to ask, like, where does this go from here? Where do they go with Frank Reich? Where do they go with the front office? It's just gotten so bad so fast there. And even if you weren't totally bullish on the Matt Ryan experiment and it being the next kind of stage of the quarterback roulette that they were playing, I still didn't expect it to look like this.
He looks
I kind of feel
man.
like it's not just. Yeah, he looks bad. I mean, when I look at the totality of it, I think Ryan looks bad, but he didn't look great the last couple of years in Atlanta. I don't think you sold the locker room. Getting later year Phillip Rivers is like, hey, this guy's going to get Hall of Fame votes. I can get it. I would have been more enthusiastic about late year Phillip Rivers than I would have been about getting Matt Ryan. Carson Wentz, we always knew was going to be a gamble. I also think, and I'm curious, what you sort of think about this, Robert. I think also what this year demonstrates with Wilson, with Matt Ryan, is we can finally dead this hot take that all you have to do is plug and play with quarterbacks. I think there was sort of this myth that after Brady goes to Tampa Bay, it's like, oh, all you need is somebody. And then after you put Pat Stafford, on the Rams, all you need is a quarterback. No, you actually need to have a functional team. It ain't just putting somebody in the driver's seat. And I think we might see the end of some of these big blockbuster trades for these aging quarterbacks, because they're going to recognize, hey, these guys can't plug and play. If you don't have a good coach, if you don't have a good scheme, if you don't have good sort of teammates and situations around them, you're not necessarily going to march your way to a Super Bowl.
I think that's a very good point. I look at it a couple different ways. I do think that having that guy who can elevate your offense when the play is wrong, the play call is wrong, the play caller isn't necessarily right, that's really important. What Matthew Stafford could do for the Rams and the literal expansion of their passing game, because Matthew Stafford was there, is the reason that they won the Super Bowl last year. It was hugely important, but they also had the best pass protection in the league. If you look at it, the ways that they could play all of that empty and all of that drop back stuff that they were trying to do, they could do that because they had excellent offensive line play last season. So it's always a little bit of the chicken or the egg. I would put the Matt Ryan thing and the Russell Wilson thing in 2 very different buckets. The Matt Ryan move is out of desperation and convenience. They traded for Matt Ryan because it fell into their laps. They had no other solution at quarterback. They moved on from Carson Wentz before they had another answer. And I think they were willing to wait out and play out the string. And Matt Ryan just happens to be the one that ended up there. Russell Wilson, that is the sort of Matthew Stafford move that we're talking about. That's looking at the quarterbacks you have saying, these guys aren't good enough. If we go get an elite quarterback, can it lift everything else up? The problem in that one isn't the move to get an elite quarterback. It's that they traded for a guy who's no longer elite. That's the issue. Ooh. It's a problem in misevaluation, and it's a problem in understanding the move that you're making and the player you're making it for. Ooh. Because that's what Russell Wilson is right now. He's not one of those guys anymore. And I think that's the problem.
Hey. All right, listen, I'm like, hey, Doc, this is it. Last word, go ahead, because I know now we had Doc versus Natalie. Now we're going to have Doc versus Robert, because Robert, you don't understand. You just went into, it was nice, neutral. It was Geneva. You had Geneva for a second until
I was being fair.
You mentioned Russell Wilson, no longer elite, and now we've got a battle. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Last word.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say as I pull out the howitzer and both katana blades. I'm going to simply say this. He's not playing like an elite athlete right now. He is not. I'm not questioned. I'm not crazy. I don't have rose colored. I don't have orange colored. I don't have Let's Ride or Go Hawks colored glasses on right now. No question about that. He's also been uncharacteristically injured. The shoulder injury put Dak Prescott out for a month. Now he's got the hamstring injury. These are not things that we've seen with Russell Wilson. These are things that happen with age. But I don't think we can fairly evaluate him at this particular point when you have a coaching staff that is this bad. Nathaniel Hackett might arguably be the worst coach in the NFL. I have never seen a situation where 2 weeks into the season, a coach had to hire another coach in order to hold his bib while he looks at the clock to figure out how to play. I don't care what circumstances or what you fail to understand after several seasons of playing on Madden, that you have an offense that is dead last in the league in red zone efficiency. That is play calling. If you're able to move up and down the field but can't score, that's play calling. And to have only scored 5 points in all the third quarters through 7 games, and 2 of those points was a safety, that's on the coach. I don't think we can make a final assessment as to where Russell Wilson is until he gets a competent coaching staff, and there's no loyalty to Nathaniel Hackett because he was hired by the last regime. We might not know if he's really done until next season. I'm willing to wait.
It's hard to extricate quarterback play from the circumstances around a quarterback. It's one of the most difficult things you have to do when you're watching and evaluating football. But there have been several moments this year where he's just making bad decisions. It has nothing to do with the structure of the offense, with the play call. You look at the last play against the Colts, that slant is open for a touchdown. You want more red zone touchdowns, throw the ball to the guy who's open in the red zone. And that's happening consistently, where there are decisions being made like, what are you looking at? And whether that's a lack of trust in what the offense looks like or what the play calling is, that may be a factor. But he right now, if you're trying to isolate those factors, he is not making the correct decisions based on how plays are unfolding. And at a certain point, some of that or most of that has to go on to the quarterback.
Ooh, all right,
I would say that most of that has to fall on your coach, but that's what I'm saying.
To be continued. So we got Doc Johnson, to be continued, Robert Mays. Great stuff, Robert, as usual. We got Doc Johnson, to be continued, Natalie. What else you going to do today, Doc? What else?
I'm just picking fights with everybody. That's what I do.
I'm trying to introduce you to people. And you come in.
I'm throwing wine in people's faces. I'm kicking my feet up on the couch.
Eddie can get another couch.
No, happy to do
Eddie
it.
can get
I'll talk to you guys later.
He can. All right, Robert, thank you.
See you guys later.
Hey, thanks for watching Brother from Another on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe before you leave, and be sure to watch us 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Peacock. Appreciate you.